Welcome to the swamp. So this review you will notice is a bit shorter than others. That's because there's not really a lot to talk about with this game. I will preface this by saying that this game just came out into early access, so everything that I say is subject to change. This is just my first impressions of the early access version of COREBORN, being the first couple of days worth, even though this video is coming out a week or two after the early access came out. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games, based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. COREBORN is touted as a survival sandbox game where you get to live on an alien planet trying to regrow civilization, all while evil forces are just around the corner and threatening your new life. Defend your home from raiding enemies and travel around the new planet for rare materials, all on a single server with multiplayer. The character creation is kind of lackluster and terrible in my opinion. The male and female options are exactly the same, minus tits. There is this weird necklace thing that you're forced to wear, and it's not really explained why. You can't turn your character to look at them while customizing, and there are few options that just feel like it's bare minimum. The top option also says nation, but it makes me wonder if later you'll be able to choose a different race to play from. After all, there are several distinct races that are in the world that you get to meet. Either way, you can't click on it at the moment. This section is going to be a 2 out of 5 for the lackluster choices available as of right now.
Hey friendo, there you are! Finally! The expedition is already waiting for us. They sent me to pick you up and give you a quick intro.
The start of the game, I would say, is pretty good. Really good, in fact. Starting off with a cutscene explaining the lore, which I felt was a bit too much of an info dump, so most of it kind of went from in one ear and out the other. You are then loaded into the city where an NPC awaits you. He will serve as your guide and the main quest giver. The characters of this world are all fully voice acted. The voice acting is also pretty good too. As he takes you through the walkways, I did get a chuckle from the press F1 for help graffiti, which the character makes a fourth wall joke about it.
Oh my, these rascals are leaving their scrolls everywhere. What's this even supposed to mean? F1? Huh, how curious. I gotta clean that up later if I don't want to get in trouble with the Praetorians.
You then head to another NPC who is the one that transports you between the main map and the city. The first time you talk to them, it will perform another cutscene that plays out like a D&D campaign, with a DM telling you what befalls your character, before waking up with the guide character on the border of the forest and the farmland. From there, you begin your tutorials. I'm gonna rate the start a 4.5 out of 5. While it's one of the best starts I've had in a game like this, I did have some issues with the farming of materials themselves during the tutorial part, which slowed down and hindered a lot of the start of my game. That'll be talked about later, but it did affect the start of the game for me, which is why it's affecting the score. The exploration is also going to be a bit underwhelming. While the locations themselves are very beautiful, from large farmlands to snow-topped mountains with blue crystals, I have found plenty of areas that look like it could be something, but it would be empty. I found at least 3 spots in the first little area that would look like a town or a camp, but it's void of NPCs except for one guy at one of the camps that I talked to, but he talked as if it was a huge military camp, but there was no one there. I did eventually find a town with NPCs, but I couldn't interact with any of them. Near where I was building my base, I also found large bones, and near those, I found a door that looked like it would lead down into a dungeon or a cave underneath those bones, but nope, I couldn't enter it at all, nor any building that I found. Most of the map is also covered in homes and random building pieces of other players, which kind of ruins a bit of the aesthetic and immersion at times. I'm going to rate the exploration a 2 out of 5. Clearly planned for things to be on the map, but it is unfinished in its current state. This game is touted as a survival game, but there are hardly any survival mechanics. This is not a survival game at all. There are no hunger bars, barely a stamina bar. Anything you would associate with a survival game is absent. So this is going to get a 1 out of 5. The reason why I'm rating it so low instead of skipping it is because of their flaunt on how it's a survival game, but it doesn't have any survival mechanics in it. If it did the bare minimum, I would have rated it a bit higher, at least a 2. And if it had said that it wanted to be just a sandbox MMO and not a survival game, then I would not have rated it at all. The building and crafting is where I start to have a lot of issues with this game. While the mechanics themselves are basic from other games similar to this one, with the only unique system being the weapon crafting, where you have to craft the blade, the handle, the guard to assemble a sword. However, I think it's annoying and it requires 3 different workbenches just to make a sword. There's also a base defense system where you have attacks on your town. I didn't get to try this system out and I don't know what triggers it, so I'm not going to talk much about that, but I know it does exist. But back to the crafting. The grinding alone is terrible to do as a solo player. This game is said that it wants to be an MMO. On top of that, they are practically making the game either mandatory to play with others, or just very grindy as a solo player. From resources taking a while to respawn, which leaves you sometimes wandering for minutes at a time over the map just to find some goddamn stone, to several crafting items taking 5 or even 10 or more resources, yet you can only get 1 or 2 per gather, and items like resin are much rarer to find, and sometimes the RNG would not let you have any at all. I got frustrated many times in my short playthrough with constantly grinding materials to build a single thing. It would be more tolerable for multiplayer, but I feel forcing people to play with each other is just bad game design. Just because the game is an MMO doesn't mean people should be forced to be playing with others. Many people prefer to play solo, but to have the option to interact with other players. It is clearly seen in my playthrough how everyone goes off and does their own thing and makes their own homes, and the chat was almost always quiet. I may have also talked about a few other sections here, but I felt like I had to explain why that forced interaction is bad gameplay, and with the grind needed to build and craft things in this game being tuned to accommodate for a group of people, it will be more annoying as a solo player. So I'm going to give this section a 2.5 out of 5. The systems themselves are basic and generic. The only unique crafting system is the weapon crafting, but it's still very annoying, and not to mention all of the grindiness involved with it. The PvE is also pretty terrible. On paper, it sounds decent. You have attacks and dodges. While the enemy attacks you, you can Dark Souls roll out of the way, then strike when they are open. However, it just feels bad. The animations and actions are very stiff. There's hardly any visuals that tell you that you're dodging out of the way, and even when you do, the animation is locked, so you have to wait until your attack is fully complete before you can dodge. And even if you do spam click attacks, sometimes even if you stop, one attack will be lined up in the queue, so it will still go off and prevent you from dodging when you want to. Yeah, the PvE is gonna get a 1 out of 5 from me. It's just really bad right now and very stiff, though I hope they overhaul it in the future before the full release. There doesn't seem to be any PvP from what I could tell. I didn't encounter any, and most people seem to avoid each other anyway, so I'm not going to rate this section only because I am unsure, but I am fairly certain there is no PvP in this game from what I've seen. And if there is supposed to be PvP, that's a pretty bad sign. So far, we get several info dump cutscenes and a few NPC chats here and there. There is not really much else other to the story so far, and I'm not going to rate this section because, again, the game is unfinished, though the world is pretty neat and has a lot of potential, even if it is a Warhammer Light wannabe. There seems to be a decent amount of updates to the game and bug fixes. So far they've been small in number, but you have to start somewhere. As I said at the start of this video, this is my first impressions of a few days of early access. With these various updates, most of this could become outdated and irrelevant. For now, the players, I didn't notice many players outside of the spawning area. I also already mentioned that the chat box was pretty quiet. One or two times I asked around for something and it either went unanswered or some smartass telling me that it's early access, therefore it is unfinished, in a rude way that comes up as a shut up and stop finding flaws in this game I am hyped about for so long that I don't want anyone to talk bad about it kind of way. It was really only one dude, but still. Not a good first impressions for the social aspects of this social MMO game, so I'm just gonna rate this a 3 out of 5. While I didn't really find out a lot of bugs, most of the issues came from the gameplay itself, from the stiff combat that I've already talked about, to bad RNG with gathering items. I had some frame drops, but I did also notice semi-frequent rubber banding with the server. Not as bad as Conan Exile's rubber banding, but I would still see the jittering as my character is sent back a space or two, and it only happened once in a while. It did happen once in combat, so while on screen I rolled out of the way, the enemy was still hitting me, so yeah, that was fun. I'm gonna rate this section a 2 out of 5. It could be worse, but it's more annoying than anything. My first impression score for COREBORN is going to be a 2.5 out of 5. There is a good layout to have a good game, but it is severely lacking in content, and what is available is not really that good. I would say definitely wait to purchase this game until more content has been released and they fixed up the issues that currently plague it. I will see how this game does when it does come out into the full release later on, and possibly do another full in-depth review at that time. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world, sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.